We questioned the medical examiner about the problem of excessive incisions, and in each case he had a very logical reason why the incisions were made in determining the extent and degree of injury, and we can readily see why the average individual and some funeral directors and even some doctors might think that there was excessive cutting, but
I was pretty much satisfied with it, but I didn't get any interceptions or cause any fumbles, so I was a little disappointed because that's what we needed, really, to win the game.
Are you, at this stage of your professional career, happy with your current status with the Cowboys?
Yeah, pretty much so. They have a pretty good defensive secondary, and I'm just happy that I can get a chance to play in some of these preseason games.
Now, the defensive secondary is what Coach Landry labels as one of the three important items that he has to take a lot of look at players. You have to beat out some fellas in order to make the club, don't you?
Well, that's what they say, but these guys are pretty good, and they have quite a bit of experience on me. All I can do is just keep hustling. That's all I can do.
Well, if you play as well as you did last Saturday night against the Rams, who knows, we just might see Mark Washington on the final 40 roster.
I hope so. I'd like to be here.
Well, I think it depends upon the type of offense you're really running. I mean, there's a number of teams, you know, that run offense like we do. Actually, many of them are going the I formation this year. The real basic teams naturally would be a little bit ahead. The ones that run from 1 or 2 formations and run maybe 4 or 5 plays from each, naturally they'll be a little bit ahead. But I don't see it any critical problem. I mean, we'll catch up in time.
When will that time be? Because you were quoted on coming back from the airplane trip from Los Angeles that it would be some time. How much is some time?
Well, we hope that in 2 weeks we'll be in pretty good shape. We've got to be, because after 2 more games, we'll be going in the last 2 games of the preseason, then we're going to have to bring it together.
This B-36 bomber, commonly known as the Peacemaker, was the last plane of its kind to be built at the General Dynamics plant in Fort Worth. This plane was last flown in 1959, and everybody more or less assumed that it would spend its last years on display here at Greater Southwest International Airport. But this morning, the Fort Worth City Council gave official approval to Sam C. Ball, an engineer at GD, to refit the airplane, to make it into a flying museum and tour the country with it. Ball and a group of supporters plan to operate as a non-profit corporation in rebuilding the bird. Mr. Ball, what will it take to restore the B-36 to flying condition?
Well, in terms of dollars, preliminary estimates for minimal restoration place that figure at about $50,000. In terms of time, it will probably take about 2 years.
So this B-36, once capable of a top speed of over 400 miles per hour for an unassisted 10,000 miles between refuelings, with a wingspan larger than a 747, this Peacemaker is due to fly again. Jay Lewis, Channel 8 News on the Move at Greater Southwest International Airport.
The mammoth Dallas-Fort Worth Regional Airport is beginning to take form and shape. There's a virtual beehive of construction activity. Clouds of billowing dust and smokestacks of heavy machinery fill the air, indicating the start of the grading and drainage project. Official bids will be let on the project tomorrow afternoon. Grading and drainage construction activity has already begun. Also, construction activity has begun on the markup for the terminal complex. I talked with Mr. Tom Sullivan, Executive Director of the Dallas-Fort Worth Regional Airport, about the markup of the regional airport.
Well, this is the first above-the-ground evidence of construction in progress for the new regional airport terminal buildings. And what these panels are test panels that are being used to demonstrate the possible exterior finish of the buildings. And all of these various panels are constructed of different aggregates and different sands that are all local
here in Texas.
When it was first announced that you were going to build a mock-up of the terminal, there was quite a bit of humorous reaction saying, well, for goodness sakes, why do they want to throw away $250,000, $60,000 just for a bunch of plywood? How much money is it going to save you using this mock-up?
Oh, we expect that it'll save over $2 million. We're satisfied that it's paid for itself already before the construction has even gone up, many, many times over.
Art Sinclair reporting for Channel 8 News at the site of the regional airport.
I don't think Ben Barnes expected it to be quite so much so, but Barnes ended up in the shadow at his own dinner, really. There were quite a few stars of the Democratic Party present. Governor Connolly, Governor Shivers, Governor Smith, practically the entire state government. But LBJ definitely was a star of the show. And his speech, which I had expected to be about a 5-minute perfunctory praise of Barnes, it was Barnes' dinner, turned out to be a 25-minute speech. A really impassioned defense of Johnson's administration, and a section of the speech about 10 minutes long sounded for all the world like a State of the Union address. It was Lyndon Johnson calling for reform and calling for new legislation in the areas of ecology and fighting crime, solving health problems like cancer and heart disease. People, I think, watching him completely forgot that this was a state political function, and saw a president up there again. He may have felt like a president again.
The Vietnam War more or less put an end to the Johnson administration. What did he have to say about the way Nixon is handling it, or about today's...
Not a word about Nixon's handling of it. The only reference he had to the Vietnam War in his speech was in the section where he was defending the record of his administration. He said that he interpreted the Vietnam War as an effort on his part to maintain peace in the world, to help an Asian nation maintain its independence and freedom without getting into a nuclear war with China or Russia. Then he went on mostly to talk about the domestic areas of his administration's record. He talked about the health bills, the civil rights bills, and the other domestic legislation that has been passed.
Isn't it somewhat unusual for a man who's been in political hiding for so long, since his administration was over, to come out and name specific areas that need action?
It really was to me, Jim. I was sitting there watching him and listening and thinking a couple of thoughts. First of all, that it was a very poignant moment. Here was an old man, and he really does look very old, a former president who has been very quiet. He's been one of the most maligned presidents, I guess, in our history. And now, of a sudden, he's emerging hard to defend his administration, to say, and he did say, I don't regret a thing. I'm not sorry for anything. And then, as if he were still president, he called for the goal of the 1970s to be the solution of health problems like heart disease and cancer, just as space had been the goal of the 60s. He called for new programs in our courts to eliminate small cases like drunkenness from the courts so they wouldn't clog the courts and prevent more important cases from being tried. He called for new legislation in the field of ecology, in the field of air pollution particularly. It was as if he were still president, asking the Congress to pass his new program.
This year's schools in the Dallas Independent School District is starting a little early. Teachers are already getting ready by the way of cleaning up and fixing up and getting their curriculums ready for the new students. Classes begin next Tuesday. Monday, the 24th, is set aside for those new students who are new to the Dallas system. They need to get their forms filled out and get acquainted to the schools. Here at Madison High School today, a special emphasis was placed on teaching in the inner city schools. There will also be a special effort in the Dallas Independent School District on drug abuse education this year. Teachers in all the elementary inner city schools were here at Madison today to find out just what direction the inner city school education will take this year. An inner city school is one that is in the core of the city and has students that are both educationally and culturally deprived. More than 1,500 teachers were present. Secondary teachers are still to come. Drug abuse education will be presented to the teachers on Wednesday in a little bit different manner. The director of the program, George Reed, will have his presentation via television to all the teachers in all 184 schools. The teachers also starting back to school with an expectation of 4,000 more students. An estimated 178,000 students are expected in the Dallas Independent School District this year. Superintendent Estes says that this year's school program should be at its very best. For Channel 8 News on the Move, this is Jess Brown.
Well, it's unfortunate, I think, that the appropriations for this were passed so late in the year. I have a feeling that it wasn't a matter of the administration not thinking it was important. It was more a matter of it was one of the things that slipped between the boards. They were overlooked. Another thing I think you should understand is this program basically was meant to supplement the city's existing recreation program. In other words, they would buy some equipment, they would hire a few more people to work in the program. It wasn't meant to be a brand new program.
Well, primarily it's just a matter of renovating the flight essential parts of the aircraft, meaning the airframe, the flight controls, and the engines.
Will various things have to be done to the plane that weren't done when it was built to meet modern specifications?
Absolutely not. It's a magnificent airplane.
What will become of it after it's completed?
Well, after we have succeeded in making the airplane fly, we'd like to remodel the interior as an airborne museum and tour the country with the airplane as a museum.
To begin with, there isn't an area or a neighborhood that is ever happy to see elevated portions of roadways or freeways coming into their neighborhood. We can recall some 3 or 4 years ago when North Tollway was trying to overpass only 4 streets in North Dallas. And the citizens in the immediate area organized, and they were so aroused, they asked that they not be elevated, that they not go over, and as a result of their work, the change was made, and they were made into underpasses instead of overpasses.
If you understand the complete problem that the medical examiner has in explaining injuries and causes of death, then you wouldn't be so ready to accept the fact that he had done excessive cutting.
Well, does the committee feel that the medical examiner system has been criticized unjustly because of the people not knowing exactly the role of the system?
We feel that the medical examiner system has been misunderstood. That may be part their own fault for not having time enough to explain to people just what is necessary for them to do.